be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I would ask unanimous consent that I be able to speak for up to 15 minutes.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I wanted to discuss today the tragedy that has occurred in Alabama and other states across the southeast as a result of the tornadoes that hit our region. In a 24-hour period between 8 a.m. in the morning on April 27th and 8 a.m. in the morning on April 28th, the National Weather Service estimates there were a total of 312 tornadoes across the southeast. The worst outbreak previously reported occurred in April of 1974, and that was with 148 tornadoes. The Birmingham-Tuscaloosa F4 tornado had a path with a maximum width of 1.5 miles and a length across the from Tuscaloosa to the Birmingham area of 80 miles. It stayed on the ground almost continuously, very unusual. It went through a number of populated areas, and it resulted in, that tornado alone resulted in 65 deaths. Alabama's current death toll is nearing 250, with thousands injured. And frankly, after seeing the damage in the affected areas, I'm amazed that we did not lose more lives. And as I talk to mayors and others on the ground, they say the same thing. I talked to Mayor Gunn in Hackleburg today. I believe he was the one that told me that they were about 18 killed, and he was pleased that it was that low. They were hammered with an F5, the highest, strongest tornado that basically destroyed his whole town. He has all his businesses, including the distribution center for a jeans manufacturing company, have been destroyed. It's very, very difficult for them to pay for anything. Their businesses who pay sales tax that go to the city have been damaged. And he just made the point, and I just, as a good example, that he, in this little town of Hackleburg, I know, had $100,000 emergency funds. And they've been on massive overtime for a week since the event, and other costs are rising, and it's very difficult for him. I want to thank President Obama for the quick response that he made to the tragedy. The people of Alabama appreciated the fact that he and later cabinet members actually visited some of the devastated areas. And we appreciate the quick action in declaring Alabama and other areas a major disaster area. That does help in a lot of different ways. I also had the opportunity, I was with him in Tuscaloosa when he came there, and Mrs. Obama, and she, of course, did a beautiful job also of talking to people who have lost so much and comforting them. Also, Secretary Napolitano came on Sunday to the Pratt City area in Birmingham, and along with several other cabinet members, they also, I think, got a real appreciation for the severity of the damage and reassured Alabamians that help would be on the way in an appropriate fashion. It certainly will take, for a number of our communities, an integrated, coordinated state, local, federal response to get these communities back on track. That's why we have a Federal Emergency Management Agency. That's why we have monies in the budget for these kind of things, although this one is a particularly damaging event, I have to say. As a ranking member on the Budget Committee, I'm aware that we have to be careful about how we spend money. We certainly don't have any money, not a dime, to waste. And I got to tell you, every time I've been there or I've talked to people on the ground. They tell me how impressed they are with the volunteers that are arriving from all over the country, bringing food and water and helping people who are working, bringing chainsaws to help clear roads and highways and driveways to people's homes. That has been a real encouraging thing, and it makes me very, very proud to to represent a group of people who have the integrity and the work ethic and the determination to overcome tragedy. It's been encouraging to me. Walking through the devastated neighborhoods less than 24 hours after the tornado, people were stunned at the damages and the complete loss of homes and belongings. Many of the people felt themselves lucky to be alive. Their entire roof was gone. Most of the walls were gone, and yet somehow they came out with minor injuries or less severe injuries. Others, of course, did not survive, and others received severe injuries. But it is always amazing to me in a tornado situation how a house can be just obliterated and persons come out of it with not too severe an injury. And for that, they were expressing great appreciation. And it's a reflection, I think, of the faith these individuals have in a higher being that I think gives the courage to go on. One of the things that is perfectly clear, and that is that housing in some areas will be a critical matter. Many houses are totally destroyed, nothing basically but a slab, a concrete slab left. Of course, many mobile homes, manufactured housing were completely lost. They're not on a slab, and those homes have been rolled over and completely demolished or disappeared, basically. So we're going to need to work in a way that FEMA has done before to provide emergency housing. Some of that in the larger areas with more housing around, and there's vacant housing in some of our areas, ought to be moved promptly into that vacant housing that currently exists. Some areas, they're just not housing for individuals to move into, and I was told today by two mayors that they have people still in recreational areas, gyms and that kind of thing, using as a place for shelter. So we're definitely not where we need to be yet. Some FEMA trailers are being moved into areas of the state. That may have to be done. I wish we could avoid that step, but in many areas it cannot be avoided. Avoided in the sense that, to me, the best way to handle a situation where a person's home is gone is to help them move as quickly as possible in what could be a permanent residence, either through rental or purchase. The longer that person is in a temporary residence, they are also receiving often federal assistance. The longer they're in this temporary limbo circumstance, their life is less stable, and the federal government is spending more money. So money that could be utilized, that we could avoid being spent for temporary housing, if that could be used to facilitate permanent housing, would be a more effective policy. But it's just not easy. In some instances, it just can't be done. Initial reports indicate that Alabama's losses may rival or surpass its $1 billion loss in Hurricane Katrina. That's a factor that you don't normally expect from tornadoes. And we will wrestle with those costs as we go forward. But dollar losses are nothing compared to the severe loss of life. We have a record-setting loss of life. Going through the Rosedale Court area of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, seeing first responders and volunteers who were frantically trying to help. And in particular, they were searching for a missing young girl. And they kept on, and there was a large number of people there and throughout this area where metal was twisted and roofs were gone and no walls hardly were standing, and materials were 3 feet deep on the floor of plywood, roofing, and the like. They found that young child, but unfortunately it was too late that her life had been lost. So that's the kind of thing that's been happening throughout the state. Our people are responding with courage and dignity and hard work, and volunteers from all over the country and all over Alabama are assisting. I was with the seafood group Friday down from Biola, Battery, Alabama, the seafood capital in many ways of the Gulf of Mexico. And they had been helped so many times over the decades from various hurricanes that came through. They wanted to help. And so they brought large amounts of shrimp and seafood and their cookers, and were going to Tuscaloosa or some of the other areas and serving people out there who were volunteering or emergency responders who were working to help in that neighborhood. That's the kind of thing that makes you proud and makes us all recognize that the good that we have in our people. So, Mr. President, I just wanted to share these thoughts and to note that I have filed a resolution that deals with this disaster, expressing the condolences of the United States and noting many of the factors that are relevant to this damage. And we'll be asking that this Senate pass that. I would note it's been co-sponsored by Senator Shelby, my colleague from Alabama, Senator Alexander and Corker from Tennessee, Cochran and Wicker from Mississippi, Chambliss and Isaacson from Georgia, and I understand others are signing on as we proceed. So I thank the Chair for allowing me to share these thoughts. I thank the administration for helping to respond promptly. I thank the volunteers from all over America that have come to our state to assist those in need. Would yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Cochran.
15 minutes?
Without objection.
Mr. President, I want to speak in opposition to the nomination of James Cole to be Deputy Attorney General of the United States, who we'll be voting on a little later this afternoon. Despite President Obama's recess appointment of Mr. Cole, who'd had a number of opposition statements in the committee and was not looking at smooth sailing, I do believe that we should oppose his confirmation and his permanent appointment based on some concerns I have with his record, specifically his criminal justice view on the war on terror, which I believe is utterly wrong, and his questionable decisions as an outside consultant for AIG, the big insurance company that had to be bailed out to the tune of, I think, $170 billion in this last bailout matter. He was an independent consultant supposed to be monitoring that company for other errors that they had made previously. And so that is a concern to me. I served 15 years in the Department of Justice as a United States Attorney for almost 12, and as an Assistant United States Attorney. I respect the Department. I love the Department of Justice, but I'm getting concerned about it, and I'm not happy with some of the decisions and philosophy that are emanating from the Department. I believe they do not reflect the highest standards and qualities that we expect from that great department. And this nominee has a lot of good qualities. I believe he has a number of strengths that, as management and some experience in the department, that I would give him credit for. But at this point in history, I believe that his approach, particularly to the war on terror, along with the Attorney General's approach to the war on terror, are not good. But I've just about had enough of it. And I'm just going to say this. I'm not voting for another nominee, and I'm not going to vote for this one, who spent their time defending terrorists. Before they go to the department, it's all right to defend an unpopular person, but 13 to 16 members of the Department of Justice, political appointees by this administration, have had as their background defending terrorists, including the Solicitor General, who is going to be coming up, I guess, in committee this week, and also ACLU. And so you get this much of a tilt in the leadership of the department. It gives me great concern that the great department I loved and respected is getting off base. So I think it's important to note that we're hearing warnings right now that one of the top priorities of the Department of Justice must be the recent warning we received that the terrorist groups, quote, almost certainly, close quote, will try to avenge the death of Osama bin Laden and the continuing economic crisis that faces our country. So I believe that the President should be nominating proven prosecutors of terrorists, frankly, for top positions in the law enforcement agency, the United States Department of Justice. I don't think we need any more terrorist defense attorneys. When I was United States Attorney, I hired a lot of assistant United States attorneys. I looked for proven prosecutors wherever I could find them. I didn't go around to look for people who spent their spare time volunteering to defend terrorists or writing papers defending criminals. That's just the way I see it, frankly. I have to be honest about it. So we've had this one, we've had that one, we've had another one, and another, and another. Now we're 13 to 16 have been appointed to the Department of Justice who've had this background. Defending the unpopular is not disqualifying, and we voted, and I voted for a number of people in the department who have been involved in these kind of defense efforts, who filed lawsuits against President Bush. They really thought they were really doing something great. I guess they didn't turn down the evidence if it helped in any way lead to the location of Osama bin Laden. But we do have standards about how we should gather evidence, and lines should not be crossed. But that doesn't mean we're not in a war. Doesn't mean that the people who are attacking us are common criminals that need to be tried in civilian courts. They're at war with us. Bin Laden said he's at war with us. He declared war on us. You don't treat prisoners of war, captured enemy combatants, like you treat common criminals. This is fundamental. I served in the Army Reserve a number of years, some of that time as a JAG officer. I taught courses on prisoners of war and how to treat prisoners and what the standards of the field manual are. Don't claim to be a great expert at it, but I did it, had some experience in it. Mr. Cole, consistently, that some of these nominees to the department take the view that terrorists are criminals and not unlawful combatants. Let me just say briefly, if you catch a person, a murderer, a rapist, or any kind of criminal, virtually of any kind, when they're taken into custody, as the presiding officer knows, is a good prosecutor himself, they have to be, before you can interview them, once they're in custody, you have to give them Miranda warnings. And that authorizes, tells them, basically tells them, you don't have to make any statements at all. It basically says if you're an idiot, you'll make statements. You're entitled to a lawyer. If you don't have any money, they'll appoint you a lawyer. You have to go before a magistrate within a matter of hours. You're entitled to discovery of the government's case in short order, and you're entitled to a speedy trial. And you're entitled to prowl around in the government's case and find all the evidence that the government has. Whereas in war, that's not so. The classic case was ex parte queering in World War II when German saboteurs were dropped off on our coast from a submarine, and they were going to sabotage the United States of America. They were apprehended, taken to military tribunal, tried, and executed in a matter of months. And the case went to the Supreme Court, ex parte queering, and was affirmed. There's never been any doubt that unlawful combatants can be tried for their crimes in military courts. It's done all over the world. It's an established principle. Now, let's get one thing straight. If you're a lawful combatant and you are captured on the battlefield, whether you're a Japanese soldier or a German soldier or an Italian soldier, and you've complied with the laws of war and you wear your uniform and you don't attack deliberately men, women, and children, civilians, and try to kill them, and you comply with other rules of war, you can't be tried. You can just be detained until the war is over, but you don't get lawyers. You don't get trials and discovery and all of that sort of thing. But if in conducting your military campaign, you violate the internationally respected laws of war, you can not only be held as a prisoner of war, but the nation that's holding you can try you for violation of the laws of war. So that's how these 9/11 attackers who didn't wear uniforms, who attacked deliberately civilians, are perfectly fit to be tried as war criminals, unlawful warriors. at war. Nevertheless, they've announced their intention to destroy the United States, to attack the United States. They've said they're at war with us. But they've done it in an unlawful way, and they can be tried in military commissions. And this allows the military to conduct interrogation according to the laws of war over a period of months even, years even. And sometimes after months, a prisoner will start talking. You never know why they start talking. But to deny ourselves the right to allow those kind of things to happen, to say that we have to try these individuals like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in civil court is clearly in error. But that's the Attorney General's position. I asked him about it last week when he testified before the Judiciary Committee. He indicated, and not indicated, he said it still remains the policy of the Department of Justice that persons who are arrested as terrorists are presumed to be tried as in civilian court. Although Congress has passed law prohibiting monies to be expended for that on the 9/11 attackers, and the Attorney General in a huff had to say that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed will be tried in Guantanamo under military procedures as a unlawful combatant. But he doesn't like it. That's not his view. And it looks like everybody he wants to hire to be in the Department of Justice agrees with that erroneous view. It's not a close question. This is not a close question. There is no reason a terrorist who's apprehended in the United States ought to be provided lawyers and Miranda warnings. They are combatants. They're not common criminals. And thinking this way has caused dangerous confusion. As our troops and intelligence community continue to work night and day to keep our country safe, it's imperative that we view the war on terror as a real war and not a criminal matter, and regard those who wish to perpetrate terror on this country as enemy combatants, not plain criminals. Like many in the administration, Mr. Cole disagrees. In 2002, after 9/11, not long, he wrote an op-ed, published it, criticizing then Attorney General John Ashcroft's decision to try the 9/11 terrorists in military commissions. They researched the law. Attorney General Ashcroft knew what he was doing. They decided they were going to try these individuals by military commissions. At his hearing, but he had written an op-ed attacking the Attorney General for it. So now that's the man we got to nominate for the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. At his hearing last Congress, Mr. Cole repeated the prevailing and confusing Justice Department position that decisions regarding whether captured terrorists should be tried in civilian courts or before military commissions, quote, should be made on a case-by-case basis based on all the relevant facts and circumstances available at the time of a suspect's capture, close quote. Is this going to happen in Yemen? Afghanistan, Pakistan, wherever else they may be, in the United States? It's not a practical policy, because you have to tell the individuals who are making the apprehension what the rules are. And as the Attorney General said, they still adhere to the view that the presumption is that the individual will be tried in civilian court. Therefore, the presumption is that within a short time of their being taken into custody, they should be given Miranda warnings, offered a lawyer, and set for a preliminary court appearance, which could reveal to all the other terrorists exactly that their partner in war has been captured and allow them to escape. So it's just a wrong view. And why they persist in this is beyond my understanding. Congress understands it. The American people do also. This administration has established a policy that declares there is a presumption of civilian trials, but has failed to articulate a clear policy for designating captured terrorists as enemy combatants or criminals. So I remain very unconvinced that the next captured terror suspect will not be given the rights of a common criminal and told he has the right to remain silent to the detriment of crucial intelligence gathering. The 9/11 Commission, in one of their most significant findings, was that intelligence gathering, intelligence possession about what the enemy is doing is the best way to protect our country. Not prosecuting them after the fact. So telling someone they have a right to remain silent and they've got a lawyer that's going to insist that they not make any statements, does that help us gather intelligence? Well, if it's required by the U.S. Constitution, we will do it. We'll just plain do it regardless. But it's not required by law, history, or the Constitution. Law, history, and the Constitution allows these enemy combatants to be tried in military commissions, and they don't have to be given Miranda warnings, which was a court-created rule a number of years ago. It's never was understood before and is not practiced, to my knowledge, in any other nation in the whole world. And, of course, all of this provides poor guidance for our law enforcement, military, and intelligence officers as they go about their efforts. And it's a grievous and dangerous mistake to continue this policy. It seems to me that Mr. Cole and Attorney General Holder are cut from the same cloth on this issue. I'm uneasy about these two individuals holding the top two positions in the Department of Justice. And now the Solicitor General seems to be a third one that will be coming along. He's one of the highest-ranking people in the department. Their policy views appear to control the Department of Defense. In other words, if they say this is the rule, the Department of Defense has to give them Miranda warnings and so forth if they're involved in a capture, and it directly controls the FBI, which is part of the Department of Justice. As the acting second in command at Justice Department, Mr. Cole would play a lead role in decision-making in the terror prosecutions throughout the country. The Justice Department's continued insistence on a presumption of civilian trials for terrorists confirms my concerns that Mr. Cole has adhered to the failed pre-9/11 law enforcement approach to terrorism, approach that the 9/11 Commission and the nation as a whole recognized was in error and should be changed. I thought we clearly made that move. Apparently we haven't. Also of concern, from 2003 to 2007, Mr. Cole represented a Saudi prince against insurance carriers and September 11th victims who alleged that the Saudi prince helped finance terrorists. Reportedly, Mr. Cole's client was linked through Treasury Department documents to the financial support of extremist groups through the Al Haramain Foundation, a Saudi charity that has diverted funds to al-Qaeda before and after 9/11. While attorneys are free to and should be free to represent unpopular clients, Mr. Cole is one in a long line of political appointees at the Department of Justice who seem to me to make questionable choices. It seemed to be questionable choices for the key post at the agency that's charged with defending our national security, given their previous efforts to defend those involved in attacking the United States or killing Americans. According to press reports, at least 13 to 16 current Obama administration political appointees, including the current Solicitor General nominee, who represented Jose Padilla, the shoe bomber, previously provided legal counsel to suspected or convicted terrorists and enemy combatants being held in detention, or to left-wing organizations that actively sought to reverse Bush administration anti-terrorist and detainee policies. Policies that I might add were a contributing factor to the elimination of bin Laden and many other terrorists through this past decade. I'm curious to know if they've appointed anyone to key posts in the Department of Justice who's ever prosecuted a terrorist. I'd like to know that. Maybe they have. Surely somebody has, but it looks odd to me that so many of those who've been on the other side have been given top appointments. And I'm very disappointed in another subject with this administration's abdication of its duty to defend congressionally enacted laws, specifically the Defense of Marriage Act. The Attorney General has stated that the President decided, Attorney General Holder, that President Obama had decided he would no longer defend this law. After reviewing the Attorney General's recommendation that DOMA falls under the exception in which, quote, the Department of Justice cannot offer a reasonable argument in defense of the statute's constitutionality, close quote. Well, it's been defended and upheld by a number of courts. How do we just waltz in now and decide we're not going to defend a congressionally enacted statute signed into law by President Clinton because they don't like it? That's what it appears to me. The administration apparently came to this conclusion after unilaterally deciding that, quote, classifications based on sexual orientation warrant heightened scrutiny, close quote, in the face of precedent from 11 circuit courts of appeals holding that such classifications should be reviewed under the much lower normal rational basis standard. There's a very big difference between refusing to defend the law that the administration regards as unconstitutional and refusing to defend a law that the administration opposes on policy grounds.
Fifteen minutes.
Mr. President, I would ask ask unanimous consent to speak for one additional minute.
Without objection.
Mr. President, the Department of Justice is a great department. They have some very, very fine people there. I know Mr. Cole has some good qualities. I supported Mr. Holder for Attorney General, but I'm very uneasy about the direction the department is taking on a large number of issues, and I believe one of the reasons this is happening is because they've surrounded themselves with a group of leftist lawyers, activist lawyers, who don't operate according to the more traditional views of law and justice in America. That's my view. Other senators may disagree. That's what my view. And I would just say that I'm not able to support Mr. Cole for that and the reasons I've stated, and I hope in the future that the administration will appoint more nominees that have proven records of independence, effective prosecution, and commitment to law. I thank the Chair and would yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Maryland.
Mr. President, I greatly respect my friend from Alabama, Senator Sessions. I come to a different conclusion in regards to Jim Cole. I've worked with Jim Cole. I was part of a legislative committee in the House of Representatives that had to do some very difficult work on an ethics issue involving a former Speaker of the House of Representatives. It was a tough decision to bring together 6 members of the House, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and to do it in a way that would maintain the nonpartisan requirements of an ethics investigation. The atmosphere was very partisanly charged around the work that we were doing. I know this sounds familiar because people in Maryland and Connecticut and around the nation understand that we're working in a very partisan environment here. And they expect the people that are charged with the Department of Justice to work in a nonpartisan manner. This is not a partisan position, the Deputy Attorney General. This is a person who is working with the Attorney General as the nation's lawyer. And we want somebody who has the experience, someone who has the character and commitment to carry out this very important position. As I said, I've known Jim Cole. He has 13 years' experience within the Department of Justice as a public interest attorney. That's been the largest part of his professional career, has been the service of public interest. And he's always followed policy, not politics. He has a very distinguished career in law, and he's the type of person that we would like to see within the Department of Justice. As I pointed out, I worked with Jim Cole when I was in the House of Representatives. We worked on a very difficult investigation involving the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, who at the time was Speaker. The ranking Republican, actually the chairman of the committee, was Porter Goss, a Republican from Florida. Porter Goss's observations of Jim Cole was that he was a brilliant prosecutor, extraordinarily talented. And then Mr. Goss goes on to say that over time he brought our committee to a bipartisan cooperation, which was desperately needed in order to successfully complete that matter. At the end of the day, the six of us came together in a unanimous recommendation. That's the type of person that Jim Cole is. He was professional and put policy ahead of politics. Former Senator John Danforth testified at Jim Cole's confirmation hearing, a former Republican member of the United States Senator. He called Jim Cole a lawyer's lawyer. Jim Cole has support from Democrats and Republicans, former high officials within the Department of Justice have all recommended it. We have former Deputy Attorney Generals appointed by both Republicans and Democrats supporting Jim Cole's nomination for Deputy Attorney General. Let me just quote one other person I hope would be greatly respected on both sides of the aisle, and that's Fred Fielding, the White House counsel for former President George W. Bush. He said that Mr. Cole combines all the qualities you want in a citizen public servant. He understands both sides of the street and is smart and tenacious and is a person of unquestioned honor and integrity. That's what Fred Fielding, the former White House counsel to President Bush, said about Jim Cole. Jim Cole was supported by former RNC officials and DNC officials because he's not partisan. He's a nonpartisan person who's put public interest law as his top priority. I was listening to Senator Sessions talk about terrorism. We've had a spirited political debate. It's taking place in this country over the best way to bring terrorists to justice. Mr. Cole, however, will always put principle over politics, and he is committed to evaluating each case and matter that comes before him based on the facts and the law. That's what you want from the Department of Justice. They're the values and the character that we want in our nation's Department of Justice. And Jim Cole will bring that to the Department of Justice. He's already brought it to the Department of Justice. It's one that I believe we all believe in. We're a nation at war with al-Qaeda and Taliban and their associated forces. We need a tough, aggressive, and flexible policies that recognize the paramount importance of providing the President with the ability to use all of the lawful tools of our national power to protect American people and bring terrorists to justice. Jim Cole believes in that. He's committed to working with the Congress so that we use all available tools. We make the judgment in each individual case as to where is the most effective way to bring a terrorist or criminal to justice. He not only has expertise in handling terrorists and bringing them to justice, he's had very important positions in the Department of Justice supervising the criminal prosecution of white-collar crimes. He understands the full breadth of the Department of Justice and is a very valuable player in making sure the Department of Justice follows in the fine tradition of that agency. I just urge my colleagues to vote to move forward, at least vote to allow that this nomination get an up or down vote. This is a very important position, the Deputy Attorney General. You know, we talk about we were sent here to Washington to make tough votes. Okay. I don't think this is a tough vote. I think Jim Cole is the best person for this critically important job, and I don't think he is at all a partisan person. I know him well. I know him to be a career-type individual who is interested in doing the right policy. But this is not a nominee where you should be using a filibuster to prevent an up or down vote. This is a very important position for our country. The dignity of the Senate and the Department of Justice and the decency of Jim Cole, I urge my colleagues to allow us to go forward with an up or down vote on his confirmation, and I urge my colleagues to support his confirmation to be Deputy Attorney General of the United States. And with that, Mr. President, I would suggest the absence of a quorum and yield the floor.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
suspended.
Without objection.
Mr. President,